There are stories in Hollywood that go beyond fame, beyond box office numbers, beyond the red carpet and the golden statues. Stories that cut straight to the heart of what it means to be human. This is one of those stories. Right now, across social media, people cannot stop talking about a teenage boy who was recently spotted walking through the streets of Los Angeles, tall, confident, and completely unbothered by the cameras. He was not dressed to impress. There were no handlers, no publicists, no entourage. Just a young man strolling beside his mother, carrying shopping bags, laughing at something she said. And yet, the moment those photos and videos spread online, the internet absolutely lost its mind. Why? Because that young man is Louis Bardo Bullock, the adopted son of Oscar-winning actress Sandra Bullock. And the transformation people are seeing today, from the tiny infant who made headlines in 2010 to the tall, broad-shouldered 16-year-old he has become, is nothing short of breathtaking. But this story is not just about how a boy grew up. It is about where he came from, what he survived, who chose him, and how the woman who chose him quietly walked away from one of the most powerful careers in Hollywood history, all to make sure this one child never felt alone again. So, let's go all the way back to the beginning, because to truly understand the transformation of Louis Bardo Bullock, you first have to understand the woman who made it all possible. Sandra Annette Bullock was born on July 26, 1964, in Arlington, Virginia. Her father, John Bullock, was a voice coach for the United States Army. Her mother, Helga Meyer, was a German opera singer and vocal instructor who had performed across Europe. From her earliest years, Sandra lived a life that was anything but ordinary. She spent parts of her childhood moving between Germany and Austria, absorbing new cultures and languages with ease. She grew up bilingual, adaptable, and deeply curious about the world around her. That restless energy and determination to find her place in the world followed her to New York and then to Los Angeles in the late 1980s, where she chased her dream of becoming an actress. The early years were brutal. Small roles, rejections, a grind that would have broken most people. But Sandra was not most people. Then, in 1994, everything changed. She starred opposite Keanu Reeves in the action thriller Speed, playing Annie Porter, a quick-thinking, brave young woman caught on a bomb-rigged city bus. The film was a massive hit, grossing over $350 million worldwide, and overnight, Sandra Bullock became America's sweetheart. She had the rare quality of being simultaneously tough and warm, sharp and relatable, glamorous and completely down-to-earth. She followed Speed with a string of beloved films. While You Were Sleeping in 1995 showed her gift for romantic comedy. Miss Congeniality in 2000, where she played clumsy FBI agent Gracie Hart going undercover in a beauty pageant, turned her into a global superstar. That film alone grossed over $212 million worldwide. Then came Crash, 2 Weeks' Notice, The Proposal, and countless others. By the late 2000s, Sandra Bullock was one of the highest-paid actresses on the planet. She had everything Hollywood promised: fame, wealth, recognition, power. But something was missing, and it would take a hurricane, a broken marriage, and one tiny baby boy from New Orleans to finally show her what that something was. In August 2005, Hurricane Katrina tore through the Gulf Coast of the United States with catastrophic force. New Orleans bore the worst of the destruction. Entire neighborhoods were swallowed by floodwaters. Families were ripped apart. Thousands of children were left vulnerable, displaced, and desperately in need of permanent homes. Sandra Bullock had a long and genuine connection to New Orleans. She was not merely a celebrity who signed a check and moved on. She poured millions of her own dollars into the city's rebuilding efforts, including significant contributions to Warren Easton Charter High School, helping restore one of the oldest public schools in New Orleans. She showed up. She cared. The city meant something to her in a way she found difficult to explain in interviews. In a deeply emotional 2018 interview, Sandra revealed that when Katrina happened, something shifted inside her. She had already begun thinking about adoption. She and her then-husband Jesse James had quietly started the process together as early as 2006. But after Katrina, she said something told her with quiet certainty, "My child is there." She has described the feeling as unexplainable, almost spiritual. It was not logical. It was not practical. It was simply true in a way she could not argue with. The adoption process, however, was anything but quick. It took 4 years. 4 years of paperwork, waiting, uncertainty, and hope stretched thin. For years of not knowing if and when a child would come. And then, in January 2010, Louis Bardo Bullock was born in New Orleans. Louis did not come into this world easily. He was born prematurely, which meant his earliest weeks of life were spent not in the warmth of a family home, but in a hospital incubator, fighting with everything his tiny body had. No biological family stepped forward to claim him. He entered the foster care system almost immediately, a newborn, completely alone, with no one to hold him through those fragile first days. There's something almost unbearable about imagining that. A baby, brand new to the world, fighting to simply stay in it, with no one waiting for him on the other side. But Sandra was waiting. She just did not know it yet. She had been quietly working with adoption agencies in Louisiana, and when Louis was just a few weeks old, around 3 to 3.5 months after his birth, Sandra finally met him for the first time. She has spoken about that moment in the rare occasions she has opened up about her private life. The feeling, she said, was immediate and overwhelming. There was no question. There was no uncertainty. She looked at this tiny boy and knew, with the same certainty that had told her he was in New Orleans in the first place, that he was her son. He's just perfect, she told People magazine when she finally went public with the adoption in April 2010. I can't even describe him any other way. It's like he's always been a part of our lives. By that point, her marriage to Jesse James had collapsed in a very public and painful way. Sandra had finalized the adoption as a single mother. In a single season of her life, she had lost her marriage and gained her son, and she has never once suggested she would trade that exchange for anything in the world. She named him Louis Bardo Bullock. What makes the timeline of Louis's adoption so extraordinary is what was happening in Sandra's professional life at the exact same moment. In December 2009, The Blind Side had been released in theaters. Sandra played Leah Tui, the fierce, loving woman who took in Michael O'Hare, a homeless teenager, and changed his life forever. The film earned $309 million at the box office and became one of the most celebrated sports dramas ever made. Sandra's performance was universally praised. Critics called it her finest work. And in February 2010, she stood on the stage of the Kodak Theater in Los Angeles, dressed in black, tears streaming down her face, and accepted the Academy Award for Best Actress. What almost no one in that room knew, what almost no one in the world knew, was that while Sandra was filming, promoting, and preparing for that Oscar campaign, she was also quietly in the process of adopting Louis. She had deliberately kept it private, protected it from the noise of the spotlight. When she finally revealed Louis to the world on the cover of People magazine in April 2010, it shocked everyone. America's sweetheart had not just won an Oscar, she had become a mother. And from that day forward, everything in Sandra Bullock's life quietly but permanently rearranged itself around one small boy. Sandra Bullock was, by any measure, one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. She could have kept going. She had projects lined up, deals on the table, a career at its absolute peak. Instead, she pulled back, deliberately, without apology. She said it herself, simply and without drama. "I'm not retiring. Just going to not spend time in front of the camera for a while. I have beautiful babies. I'd rather look at them." That is not the kind of statement most people in Hollywood make when they are at the top. The industry runs on momentum, on visibility, on never letting the public forget you exist. Sandra chose her child over all of it. She drastically reduced her workload. She turned down major projects. She moved between her homes in Los Angeles and Austin, Texas, building an environment for Louis that was warm, grounded, and as far from the Hollywood machine as possible. She handled much of his daily care herself, choosing presence over publicity in every way possible. She also made a decision early on that she has spoken about with quiet passion. She refused to call Louis her adopted son. In interviews, she pushed back against the label firmly. "Let's all just refer to these kids as our kids," she said. "Don't say, my adopted child. No one calls their kid their IVF child. Let's just say, our children. It was a small linguistic choice with an enormous emotional message. Louis was not her adopted son. He was simply her son. Full stop. No asterisk. In December 2015, Sandra quietly expanded her family once more. She revealed to People magazine that she had adopted a second child, a little girl named Layla, who was around 2.5 to 3 years old at the time. Layla, like Louis, had spent time in the Louisiana foster care system before Sandra found her. In interviews, Sandra described the feeling of meeting Layla as deeply familiar, the same pull, the same certainty, the same quiet voice inside her that said, "This is my child." "The exact right children came to me at the exact right time," she said. By then, Louis was 5 years old. And according to Sandra, it was actually Louis who first expressed a desire for a sibling. When Sandra told him a little sister was coming, his response reportedly made her cry. "I knew she was coming, Mom." From their very first days together, the bond between Louis and Layla was natural and tender. Sandra often described Louis as a leader of their little pack, a gentle, watchful older brother who took his role seriously from the very beginning. Their family was small, private, and fiercely protected. And Sandra, who had spent decades being one of the most recognized faces on earth, was happiest when no one was watching at all. Around 2015, Sandra had begun a relationship with photographer Brian Randall, a man she reportedly first met when she hired him to photograph Louis's 5th birthday party. Randall was a steady, warm, and deeply private presence, everything Sandra had come to value most in her personal life. He became a significant figure for both Louis and Layla. Sandra spoke about him with genuine warmth, describing their family in terms that made clear Randall was fully present, fully invested, and fully loved. On Red Table Talk, she referred to him simply as someone with whom she was raising their children together, a family built on love and commitment, regardless of legal paperwork. The relationship lasted nearly 8 years. And then, in early 2023, came the news that shattered everything. Brian Randall had been diagnosed with ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a progressive and devastating neurological disease. The news was kept intensely private at first. Sandra, who had already been stepping back from acting following The Lost City in 2022, made her decision immediately. She stepped away from everything. She cleared her calendar completely. She turned down every script and every opportunity to be by his side. For a year and a half, Sandra Bullock was simply a woman caring for the man she loved, while doing everything she could to shield her 2 children from the full weight of what was happening. Brian Randall passed away in August 2023 after fighting the disease with extraordinary courage. The loss hit the Bullock family profoundly. But out of that grief, something else emerged, something that surprised even those closest of family. When Brian Randall died, Louis Bardo Bullock was 13 years old. And those who knew the family said something remarkable happened in the weeks and months that followed. Louis, the boy who had come into the world fighting, showed that same fighting spirit again. Not for himself this time, but for his mother and his sister. He became, by all accounts, a quiet and steady presence in the household, emotionally available, patient, mature far beyond his years. Friends of the family described him as being deeply present with Sandra on the hardest days, offering the kind of grounded, uncomplicated love that only a child raised in a truly secure home knows how to give. Sandra has said many times, in various interviews across the years, that her children saved her. That statement